8:35 is our time. Jennifer Kaufman, or Kaufman, forgive me, Jennifer, if I'm mispronouncing, and you will tell me so, is a Bergen County grandmother, a special education professional, author of Grandparenting on the Spectrum, a journey from both sides of the desk. With more than 20 years in the field, Jennifer thought that she fully understood autism until she experienced it in her own family. Well, now she's sharing practical advice to help grandparents build strong connections with their autistic grandchildren while supporting their adult children. Good morning to you, Jennifer. Please tell me the correct pronunciation so I have it correct.
It is actually Kaufman, like sauerkraut.
Kaufman. And two of my friends that I've known since childhood are Kaufman as well. So now that'll be in my brain. I appreciate that. Well,
Thank
first
you.
off, what made you? It's good to have you on. And what made you write Grandparenting on the Spectrum to begin with?
Well, as you mentioned, I was a school administrator for a very long time, working with kids on the spectrum, and I thought I knew what it was all about, and I tried to support my families the best as I could. But it all sort of changed once I became a grandmother myself, and my grandson Ben was diagnosed with autism.
And the whole goal with autism and treatment, right, is you diagnose it as early as possible. The sooner and the earlier you educate somebody who has autism, the better the outcome, right? Because I have relatives and friends who have autism, and I know that in every case, when they get treated, or treated, when I say treated, when they get special education early on, you live a very, very good life, correct?
Those early supports make all the difference. And once it's identified, probably, around age 3 or so, ideally, um, that speech and OT, PT, other supports can be put into place. And you can really support the child in the way they need supporting.
100%. I remember when I worked in on Long Island in television probably 30 years ago. I remember interviewing for on this topic, and it was still much more in its infancy than it is today, obviously. But I spoke to a person who was the director, I want to say the director of recreation for the town of Babylon, Long Island, who was on the spectrum. And he said that his mother was a nurse and noticed the difference in him when he was maybe 2 years old and went all over the place. Nobody knew what it was. And but he got the special education. He heads a department. He's living a great life. But that's the key. So it is so important. And today, thankfully, people like you and others are keeping the education out there so people know what to look for. So, how did your feelings change? Now, you have your grandson. You're all excited, and all of a sudden, what? What told you? Oh, our grandson might be on the spectrum.
So we come into becoming grandparents with all sorts of expectations for ourselves. We're going to make cookies. We're going to go on trips. We're going to do all sorts of things with our grandchild. And then you get this diagnosis. And me as a professional, though I realized some of the symptoms, some of the different markers of possibly having autism, I was still going, well, maybe he's got a hearing problem. Well,
Hmm.
maybe there's this issue or that issue. Because as a grandma, you're trying to figure out what the issue is. And once we got that diagnosis of autism, it did change everything, because then I started to look at all of my professional knowledge and what I had learned and the people that I was surrounded with that were just top notch in their field, saying, well, how can I use all of this knowledge now to help my grandson? And that it didn't quite work out that way, because grandparents like to think of themselves as experts on raising kids because we've raised our kids to adulthood. But when it comes down to autism, the person that's the expert on your grandchild is their parents,
Mm.
and learning to step back. And that's what my book is about, stepping back and letting the parents be the experts, and letting them lead the way and letting the child lead the way. And you're sort of there to support, not to lead,
That
which
must
is
be
a
so
slightly
hard.
different. It is. It's very hard, and I sort of learned some of it with trial by trial and error, because I wanted to say, hey, let's do this, or you need to do that. Lots of advice to give, especially as a professional in the field. But in the reality of the situation is, parents in most situations, are the experts on their children. But in this situation where autism is a component, the parents are truly the experts on their child and what their child needs.
Yeah, I mean, because I get what you're saying because you feel been there, done that. I have the experience already, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes I may have made. But sometimes mistakes are good. Like we're so worried, oh, my kid ate dirt. All right, well, as it turns out, we now find out when we keep our kids too pristine that they get more infections later. So it's like sometimes we are so we want to be so protective, and then we realize let the parent parent. Just like I got to parent my child, let the parent parent, and if there are going to be mistakes made, that's the parent needs to go through it with the child. But I get it, that, and I'm feeling it as you talk about it too. You explained it so well. So now the best support for both the grandchild and the adult child at the same time. Step back. Do you just you put yourself in a circumstance maybe to allow them to, or put them in a circumstance where they could ask questions and then you could give advice as opposed to just volunteering advice?
Absolutely. Look, parents of autistic children end up getting advice from the grocery store cashier, from the person walking by them on the street, from their friends, from everybody. They're constantly bombarded with advice. This is what you should do. This is what you should do. Um, but in reality, I'm surrounded by professionals, professional writing, professional people, and I hear all sorts of things, all sorts of supports that are available to people with autism. And rather than say to my daughter and her husband, you need to do this, you need to do that, sometimes I'll just send an email and say, hey, take what you like and leave the rest. And I don't ever want to feel like I'm pushing and insisting that something get done. I don't mind offering advice. In fact, here's a good example. Right now, I'm on vacation with I'm talking to you from Orlando in the House of the Mouse, and I I'm here. I look at myself as here for respite care. I'm here to provide support. I'm not here to have my own vacation, though I'm having a wonderful time. I am here to provide support and a little relief. If my daughter and her husband want to go out to dinner, here I am. And I think as a grandparent, offering those opportunities for some respite care and some opportunities to just enjoy, the husband and wife can enjoy themselves while
Mhm.
you're taking care of the grandchild. And I love taking care
Yep.
of my Ben.
I get it. I get it. And by the way, I worked for Disney when I was at Channel 7 in New York. That's ABC is owned by Disney. I worked for the Mouse for 20 wonderful years, by the way. So I spent many,
Oh,
many
that's
a time right there where you are right now. And in fact, my mother-in-law who she's recuperating right now from some medical issues and she's doing okay, but her birthday, it's one of the big birthdays is coming up in a couple of months, and we asked, what would you like for your special birthday? And we have on my husband's side, three little grandkids. She said, they live in Florida. We want to go up to Disney. So I said, great. So that's where they're going to go. But she said exactly the same thing. Even though it's very selfless. Grandparents are so selfless. She says, in spite of the fact that she's recuperating, in spite of the fact that she's not going to be able to go on any rides herself, she wants to do exactly what you said. She wants to help out, watch the kids, and the kids love Gra and Pa. That's what they're known as, Gra and Pa. And so they're all going as a big family, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and the three kids. And that's just such a good way to do it. When you have somebody who is autistic, though, and being the reason it's called a spectrum is the treatment of somebody who's autistic is different, right? Depending on where they are on the spectrum. So, how difficult is it if somebody asks for advice, knowing that, well, you know what might work for this person who has autism may not work for that?
Yeah, and that is the situation, right? Because there's a saying that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Mhm.
Because though there are similarities in how it looks, each individual is very specific. And for example, we were here yesterday, and my grandson was not thrilled because we were spending the day at the pool. We weren't going to the
Mhm.
parks, and like any 7-year-old might be. And what he wanted to do was stay in the room and the air conditioning and just sort of hang out. And that was fine. We let him lead yesterday, and it made for a happier day all around.
So smart, so smart. And as a friend of mine put it, who is on the spectrum himself, he said, we're just wired differently and our brains just function differently. And by the way, that person who I'm talking about has a CPA, a CFP, and is a lawyer. That's, but, but yet is a lot like Elon Musk in terms of emotion. Like there's no emotion on his face. That's the way he was wired. And so everybody, I think it's hard for people to understand that everyone is different who has autism, and it's just about the wiring of the brain being a little bit different. That's why you have to educate them the way their brain is wired from a young age so that they can get the best education based on the way they were wired. It doesn't mean that there's damage. It's different. That's all it is. I love that you do what you do. What's your website so people can find out more about you and the book?
Sure, my website is grandparentingonthespectrum.com, and that is also
That's
the name of
awesome.
my book.
I love it. I love it. Listen, have a great time in Orlando. I hope you get out with your grandson and enjoy the rides and the food and just enjoy it. And please come back again. And we love to hear from you again. Really, please.
Thank you so
Bergen
much,
County,
Ken. I appreciate
you're
it.
wonderful. And for taking time on your vacation too. We appreciate you. Bergen County grandmother, special education professional, author of Grandparenting on the Spectrum, a journey from both sides of the desk, Jennifer Kaufman. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes. Thank you.
You bet.